What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Beatles album review. We
Oh
got
shoot, that's the wrong out. I mean, this isn't "Station to Station" by David Bowie. Oops.
what?
No.
Oh well, here we go.
Yeah, I don't know why. I haven't been covering David Bowie yet. I don't know what the confusion was, but welcome everybody. Got Scott, Jason, Nick, and Ryan joining me once again, reviewing one of the most celebrated albums of all time.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing
Doing
good.
good.
Doing good.
I've been looking forward to this.
All right. Well, now that we're all here, Jason, the big ultimate number one Beatles fan, at least here in the US of A, do you want to share the
background information?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. So coming off of his last album, Revolver, came out in 1966. Famously, after they put that album out, they went on like one more tour. And that was their last tour that they did. They kind of came to a point where they really hated touring at this point. And they had some bad experiences, especially the Philippines was a really bad experience. And they came to a point where they're like, man, we just don't like to tour anymore. Everybody's screaming. We can't hear ourselves. It's just no fun. We're not playing that well live, really. All these things came to anyways. And so they kind of didn't really report it necessarily. They just kind of knew at the end. I want to say it was like Candlestick Park was like their last concert. And then they kind of just looked at each other and were like, yeah, this is it. Like, we don't want to do this anymore. Anyway, so yeah, that was the end of the Beatles touring era, which is pretty big because, I mean, they're a big touring band, of course. And so we kind of get this era where, yeah, we're not touring anymore. We're just concentrating on just making the studio albums, which means more, I think, experimentation in the studio, more creativity as well. And also they're still going into this. They kind of went psychedelic with Revolver, and we're continuing on with some psychedelic here with the next album as well and what they're putting out. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because everything kind of changes with the Beatles. They kind of, I feel like, we're done with the mop top, especially the Beatles haircut. Kind of, they're not really doing the Beatles haircut anymore. They're growing their hair a little bit longer. They were, fresh face. Now they're growing facial hair. John Lennon's now wearing the circle glasses, and they're not wearing, matching suits anymore. They got more psychedelic type clothing. So the image is definitely changing. In fact, it's interesting because now we don't really see the Beatles. They're not putting a movie out. They're not touring. We're not really seeing them so much. And so they put out 2 singles coming into this album. That's kind of the first time we get to really see the new Beatles. First one being Strawberry Fields Forever, which is a huge single for them and a huge video. It's such a cool video, very psychedelic type video with people going backwards and stuff, and almost the birth of music videos, it feels like, in some way, that MTV later on. That was a kind of, interesting to see the Beatles now for the first time in their new image and new sound, kind of not a new sound, but, definitely somewhat psychedelic sound again. And of course, it's a song written by John Lennon about his, childhood, kind of nostalgia song about a real place by an orphanage. We also then get Paul McCartney writes a song as well, Penny Lane. And that's another song about nostalgia, about old times, kind of about an actual street in Liverpool. So we're kind of getting 2 nostalgia songs about the 2 main Beatles. Probably the best double A side we've ever gotten. I mean, incredible stuff. It didn't go number 1 though. It went number 2, which is just shocking how that did not go number 1. And especially me and Nick, we've been going through like best songs, and we're like, how did this not get number 1 and this one did? There's so many songs that got number 1 that didn't deserve it. I think, was it Serve With Love was the big one by Lulu? We're like, how did
Love really?
How did that go one and Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields? Anyways, but
Lulu beat out that song.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the Beatles. Anyways, yeah, it's shocking, but so those were huge. They didn't appear on the next album. They would be later on Magical Mystery Tour, which a lot of people say they wish it was on the next album. It would have been awesome to get those but still great singles coming out. Yeah, so then we're getting to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967. The big thing was Paul McCartney kind of came up with this idea for a concept album, because he had this idea like, we're not touring anymore, we're not going out there and playing, so how about we kind of write this album kind of like we're touring, I guess, but we're not the Beatles, we're this made up band called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So he kind of makes up kind of this silly name for a band and over the top kind of thing, and like, okay, we're gonna pretend like we're this other band and we're like playing like a live concert, and so when people hear it, it's gonna be like they're at our concert, because they can't come to our concert because we don't do them anymore. So that was the whole kind of concept idea that Paul McCartney kind of came up with. And so they kind of went with it for the first like 2 songs. When you get Sgt. Pepper's, the title song, they're introducing themselves as this band, and it's kind of the introduction to this concert. And you hear an audience in the song, and they're kind of just going, hey, we're starting the show, kind of thing. So it kind of starts this concept, and then it goes right into A Little Help from My Friends, and they say, here's Billy Shears. It's not Ringo, it's Billy Shears is the drummer singing. So that was kind of the whole concept idea, is like, oh, we're going to go right into the next one. And then they kind of totally did away with the whole concept idea and was like, we're just going to put out Beatles songs. And the only other thing you get is the reprise, the Sgt. Pepper's reprise later on, to go, hey, are you enjoying the show? And, and then the last song comes on. So it's partly a concept album, but I don't know fully a concept album, but that was kind of the idea behind the whole album anyway. So
here's
right.
the Strawberry Fields Forever 45 single.
45.
Okay.
Yep, there it is with the picture sleeve. It's got them from their music video on the front, and then on the back there's some baby pictures of John Lennon and Paul McCartney.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll cover those 2 songs on the next review because they're on Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah, pick them next one. So
yeah. All right. So what's everybody's brief thoughts on Sgt. Pepper?
So for me, this was like one of the first Beatles anything that I remember. I remember getting introduced to by my dad. So that was it was an education. That's what I'll say about that. But I've always loved this album. I have since I first listened to it. I've just been so fascinated by it my whole life. I remember hearing somewhere that the cover that we see, there was like an alternate cover with like different historical figures on it. I don't know if you all know anything about that. There was like a theory running around somewhere. There was like a different cover, and then the cover got changed somehow. I don't know. It could be a false memory thing. I don't know. But
I don't know about a alternate cover, but I know that John Lennon had originally wanted like Hitler and Jesus to be on the front, and they decided at last minute not to.
No,
that's what
Wow.
And then if you look at the photo shoot, you can even see the Hitler cutout, but it's been moved over to the side.
Yeah.
To quote the YouTuber JonTron, that one wouldn't have aged quite so well.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
No, cancel culture would go after the Beatles on that.
John Lennon is a fascist. No, but period at the end of the sentence. I've always loved this album, and I always will.
Okay, here's where I say it. I think this is a huge step down from Revolver. I mean, I liked this album when I was in my big Beatle kick, but yeah, to me, this album hasn't really aged well for me. There's some songs that I really like on this album, but yeah, I'm probably going to be the most negative on this album, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm afraid I might be the second one negative on this album. I know this is like, so they're, this is historically their biggest album. I mean, it's huge, maybe the best seller too. I know it's a huge seller. It's the only one that won album of the year at the Grammys. I mean, so it did a lot. I mean, winning Grammy, huge seller. Also, I don't know, just historically a pinnacle point in rock history, I guess. So there's a lot going for it that you have to say positives about the album as a total. Song-wise, though, yeah, I'm not as into this album as I am to the last 3 albums. The last 3 albums were all 10 out of 10s for me. The last 3 albums were my top 3 albums of all time. I mean, 1, 2, 3 is Revolver, Rubber Soul, and Help. So it's hard to compare to those three. Are just so great in my mind. But the album, I mean, obviously, it's a solid Beatles album. It's got some great songs. There's some songs that I'm not as big of a fan that we'll get to.
This album is the reason I'm here right now. I'm not even joking. This album is the reason I'm here right now. All right. When I was in high school, I liked music. I mean, I considered myself a Beatles fan before, but I just had the Red and the Blue album on CD. I just knew some of their songs. I was more getting into like Journey and Billy Joel, but just like, just songs by them and just other songs that I heard on the radio. And then whenever I turned 17, for my birthday, I got the Sgt. Pepper record. Not this particular copy. This is my UK import, but I got a American copy for my 17th birthday that I have hanging up in my living room now. Was the very first record that I ever got. I'd never listened to a record before, much less a full record album. Other than like when I was a kid, my mom had a record player, so she would have us listen to these like Winnie the Pooh records and be like, "Oh, look at this is a record." And then she had I think Elvis's Hound Dog single as well. And those are the only records I'd ever heard before. But I played this, and it's like I'd never listened to a music album before, and I'd never listened to like an album before. And so getting to hear all of the songs and the context of this album, the first thing I thought was, what the heck did I just listen to? Whenever that final chord in The Day in the Life played, I was like, what was that? I'd rather just have the Red album on record instead. But then I got a record player, and this is the only record I had, so it was like I liked the experience. It sounds a bit different. I like kind of how the guitars sound on here. I like the sound of it, so I just kept playing it over and over again, and I just kept thinking, I'm kind of starting to get the appeal of this record thing. Like, all of these songs kind of have a purpose towards the album. They put them in a specific order. We got the album cover. You can open it up and you can see Sgt. Pepper's Band inside. Like, there's stuff inside the album. Like, look, the record comes in this cool little, I don't even know what to call this. This like fiery, wacky psychedelic sleeve. There's this little novelty sheet inside with things you can punch out. You can give yourself a Sgt. Pepper mustache. I started thinking, I wonder what would happen if I started listening to so I find some of my favorite songs and listen to the albums that they come off of. And so this album led me to check out other albums like Michael Jackson's Thriller or Billy Joel's The Stranger, Journey's Escape, like albums that had a lot of big hit songs on it. And then from there, I went and found other albums that had maybe one or two hit songs on it and introduced me to a lot of really good deep cuts. And then eventually I started just listening, if I liked an artist, to start at their debut album and work their way all the way up. And this album just kind of changed the way that I listened to music. I stopped looking at songs as individual, which I still kind of do. I don't see a song as just a part of an album. Like I would very gladly listen to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds on its own. But Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds takes on a whole new meaning whenever you hear A Little Help from My Friends, directly followed by Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, directly followed by It's Getting Better. And because of that, this album really just has a very special place for me. And I might be the most positive on this album because this is either my favorite or second favorite album of all time.
Nice. Well, Scott, if you're the most positive on it, I guess I'll be with Ryan. I'll also be really positive on this album. This album is awesome. I've never heard this album in full before until now. I've heard some of the big songs on the album, but hearing it in full, I'm like, yeah, this is another amazing Beatles album. I love the experimentation on it. There's some great tracks on here. And some of these songs, I will admit, are genuine masterpieces from the Beatles. I'm so excited to review this album. Let's go track by track, starting with the title track.
So this was off to a great start. I love this song to pieces. I love the build up, and I love when it gets to the actual chorus of "We're Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. We hope you will enjoy the show." And I love the main chorus of it all. It just beautiful way to start.
Yeah, this is a pretty good album opener. This barely missed my top 5 on the album. I don't think it's nearly as good as Taxman from the last album. I think that's like their best album opener that they'll ever have. So kind of a hard track to compare by, but yeah, this is a pretty good album opener. I like the crowd noises in the beginning, kind of like sets the mood for the album. The guitar riff is pretty good, and the chorus, pretty memorable chorus, as Ryan was singing along too. I like the part where John Lennon's like, it's great to be here. Bum 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 bum. Like to have you all. It's great opening song, and yeah, great beginning, I'd say.
Yeah, it's an interesting song on its own. Like, I'm not really a fan of the song. It's just kind of this goofy like intro song to the album. But I mean, it has to be the opener because it's introducing the band, it's introducing the concept. So it's obviously it has to be the opener to the. I mean, in that case, it's a good opener because the way it's written to be the opener. So it's like if I'm listening to the album, like I'm like, yeah, this is a fine opener. On its own, it's not a song I listen to by itself. It's funny. It's like by itself, don't care for it. On the album, yeah, it's fine. It opens the album pretty good.
I'm actually kind of where Jason is actually on that.
I've loved this song since the first time I played it on the Beatles Rock Band. When you play it that way, it's that with a little help from my friends back to back.
It's a two-parter. I know exactly what you're talking
about.
It's
like We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. You can't have one without the other. It's almost like they're the same song. They're inseparable. But I really just can't forget the first time I put this record on the record player, dropped the needle down and heard that crackling sound, and then all of a sudden those orchestra tuning sounds started up, and I was like, I'm listening to history right here. But whenever you first start this album, it's like you hear these orchestra tuning sounds, you hear like a crowd, like they're getting ready for a big show, and then that guitar comes in. Really good vocals here from McCartney, kind of getting into his more soulful, grittier tone. I love that they have the band that comes in. It's like wow, wump, wump, bump, 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 bump. And then you have like the crowd sound effects, like they're laughing, like something's going on stage, almost like you're at the concert. You just can't. You get everything but the vision. You have to imagine it yourself. All right, you open it up. And you have to imagine all these guys on stage, like with their little horns and instruments and stuff, performing whenever you hear this song.
Yeah, this is a really awesome album opener. It's like, I think this works better when you pair it with the second song. I do agree with that. But even then, it's still an amazing song. I love the guitar work. It's got some great vocals from Paul McCartney, who really belts it. I even like the little that little quiet section that John Lennon does that Nick was talking about. There, we hope you enjoyed the show. The horn section's pretty good. I think this does work as a great song, and this one did make my top 5. I think it's an awesome album opener. And that's funny, Scott, you were talking about you can't really see the visuals to Sgt. Pepper's. I guess the closest thing you can get to seeing the visuals is singing the Beatles in animated form when they sing this song in the Yellow Submarine movie.
No. I really don't like that movie for a number of reasons, but probably the biggest one is that whenever they announce Billy Shears, you're like, oh, Ringo. But no, it's John Lennon. And he's even mouthing out Ringo's singing. I'm like, no, that's Ringo.
Okay.
That should be Ringo.
Scott, it could always be worse. The Beatles could have done Lord of the Rings.
That's true.
No. But you know what? I think if anybody could have pulled off Gollum, it would have been John Lennon.
Oh,
I gotta say, like, only precious.
I would have paid money, all the money to see
Yeah.
that.
I see it now.
and
Just see.
a reminder: Stanley Kubrick almost directed that movie. The
True.
guy
Yeah.
who Shining.
Gollum would have just been staring at Frodo like,
I can just see Ringo as Frodo. What is this we got? Oh wait, no, wait. Or would Ringo be Samwise? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, speaking of Billy Shears, that ties into the next song, the only song sung by Billy Shears, I mean Ringo, with a little help from my friends.
so Scott, do you remember Beatles Rock Band where you're playing with a little help from my friends and then the words appear in the clouds like, does it worry you to be alone?
Yes.
I love that part. And I love this song. I've always seen title track and this as a bit of a two-parter like Jacob pointed out. And this is just, it's just a really nice song. And like, I love when they get to the main melody of, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. And when I was a lot younger, I'm like getting high in the air because I was dumb like that. I didn't know what the high meant in that context.
There's probably a lot of references you don't know what they mean when you're
Oh,
younger.
sure.
There's one of many drug references on this album.
Oh, it took me a hilariously long time to figure out what Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds meant.
It's just a drawing that John Lennon's son did. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is another one of the better songs on the album for me. This actually did make my top 5, which is a big improvement. This is probably the best song Ringo has done up until this point. Yeah, much better than anything he's come up with so far.
Oh,
Singing
what about
with-
Honey Don't?
Oh, crap. I forgot about that one, Jacob. I'm sorry. That was the best thing he did. I just pretended to hate that song.
When he said "Rock On, George" for Ringo, just one more
George.
time, I
Hey,
really
rock
felt
on,
that.
George, for Ringo.
Yeah. Okay, in all seriousness though, this is an amazing song. I don't think Ringo was really that impressive on the song. To me, what makes the song stand out was the vocal harmonies from John and Paul. Do you need anybody? I just need someone to love. Does it need anybody? The harmonies in that song are out of this world. I remember revisiting the album, like not recently, but like a couple months ago or whatever, and I'm like, man, his harmonies are amazing. Would you believe in a love at first sight?
Yes, I'm certain that it happens all the time.
What do you see when you turn out the lights?
Oh no.
But
I can't tell you, but I know it's mine.
Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends.
Oh,
I get high with a little help from my friends.
I love at the end when they're like, great. I think the harmonies is what really elevates the song to a new level for me. And yeah, it's a top 5 song for that reason. It's really good.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great song. It's my second favorite Ringo song that he ever does. One of the best vocal performances. His vocal performance is great. Yeah, and I all I can say is I agree with whatever Nick said. I can't really add too much more of that. I think the best part is the call and response part is what really makes that song. John and Lennon, Lennon and McCartney singing that the bump a bump bump a bump a bump bump, and then he answers bump bump a bump a bump, whatever. Like that call and response thing, I absolutely love that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the harmonies are so good on that. If you need anybody and all that, and I like Ringo's his last note was pretty good. Like I dog on Ringo being the worst singer, but then he hits that a little help from my friends, and he holds the note, and I'm like, wow, Ringo. Like I don't know, it took a lot of takes to get that in the studio, but he did a good job. So I was like, good on you.
I love this song. It just makes you feel happy whenever you hear it. I love how at the beginning it's like Billy Shears. They're kind of announcing a fake singer to, I don't know, built this very, very loose concept with this record. But you get that little guitar, and then Ringo just starts singing. Ringo, this is like vocally probably Ringo's best moment in the Beatles.
Yeah.
Really good, very memorable, very great melody. Although it's humorous because I heard that the original line was, "What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you throw rotten tomatoes at me?" And Ringo asked them to change it because he thought that if they ever did tour again, they'd actually throw tomatoes at him. So he convinced them to change it to, "Would you stand up and walk out on me?" Because he thought, if we ever do perform this live, I don't want anybody to throw tomatoes at me.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Yeah. But yeah, the harmonies like Nick was talking about, I get by with a little help from my friends. And then it's I love the call and response where it's like, what do I do when my love is away? Ringo sings that, and then we got, does it worry you to be alone? Yeah. Ringo sings, how do I feel by the end of the day? And then they both go, are you sad because you're on your own? And then it switches up at the end where the harmonies come first, and then Ringo replies, where he goes like, would you believe in a love at first sight? And then they go, yes, I'm certain that it happens all the time. They kind of switch that up for the last one. And then probably the best part of the song is when Ringo hits that high note and you get the harmonies going, boom. And then the chord just kind of dissolves into Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I love how every song on this album just kind of goes into the next one. It doesn't really give any space to breathe. They just go right on into the next song. I love that about this album. This is going to be a very bold claim. Some of you guys are going to disagree with that bold claim. But you know what? This is my opinion on this album. I think this album is probably the greatest achievement in popular music. Just with the experimentation, nothing like this had come out at the time, especially just for music as an art form. Before this, like Rubber Soul and Revolver were really big albums, but it's like when this album came out, people started taking the album more seriously as an art form rather than just a collection of songs. People heard this and they started saying, like, I want to start making my Sgt. Like you don't. I know you guys like Revolver better, but whenever somebody says that they've made their best album, they don't say I made my Revolver. They say I've made my Sgt. Pepper, and there's a reason. Like, this may not be everyone's favorite Beatles album, but it's the most important Beatles album, and in my opinion, the most important album of all time. So,
well,
I might argue either Highway 61's the most important album or Pet Sounds is, because without either of those albums,
you can have a good argument for Pet Sounds.
Sounds and Highway 61 was the first album where the Beatles were like, wow, we got to start making good albums, and then they made Rubber Soul, and then when they made Rubber Soul, Brian Wilson was like, I need to make better. And then when they made Pet Sounds, so it's hard though, because I get where you're coming from with Sgt. Pepper's, and I think it's a great album to use as an argument. But in my opinion, I say either Pet Sounds is the most important or Highway 61 by Bob Dylan.
You know what?
I would say they're all important albums. So
perhaps the most important album of all time is Mardi Gras by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Because when he said,
"Take it like a friend,"
when he said "Take it like a friend," I really thought that was very inspirational.
Oh, especially when I heard it at the Jersey Mike's.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Well,
can't go wrong with that.
Scott, can you talk to Rolling Stones about that? Because Sgt. Pepper's was #1 like 2 times in a row, and then they took it off. And I mean,
they moved it to like number 30 something or like 20 something.
Well,
like whenever I first saw they moved it, I posted on my Instagram account a picture of the album at the new number and put, I read the news today, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go in depth on it, but they chose the Marvin Gaye album for woke reasons.
To me, Sgt. Pepper's should still be #1, or put Pet Sounds #1. That's fine. Or
it's been number 2 for decades.
Yeah, but I hate that they took off Sgt. Pepper. number one, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Even though I'm not like as into Sergeant Pepper's as I am What Goes On by Marvin Gaye, I will say it's more influential, which makes it more number one worthy than
Yeah.
What Goes On ever will be. I know it's woke; they're trying to like appease people, so I can't be too mad. And plus, it's Rolling Stone. They literally call Queen a fascist band. Why are we paying attention to them?
Yeah,
If you put Highway 61 Revisited number one, I wouldn't be mad either. I don't know. There's some.
That's another good choice.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad by any of those choices.
Yeah, Pet Sounds, Sergeant Pepper,
Yeah.
or Pet Sounds, Highway 61. I mean,
Yeah.
any of those could be
I'd be
number
fine.
one.
Rolling Stone, the magazine or website, I guess I just take them with a grain of salt, and I don't take them seriously half the time.
I don't anymore.
If you're not even a magazine anymore.
Yeah.
But as to With a Little Help from My Friends, I think this is a great song. Ties so well with the other one. I like with Sergeant Pepper. I love the build up with Billy Shears. This and probably Octopus's Garden, I would argue, are probably Ringo's best vocally with the Beatles. And I do like the concept of this song. The theme of friendship is very relatable. I love the catchy chorus. The piano part's really good. I actually do have a funny story. When I was younger, when I was getting into the Beatles, I thought Ringo was the worst vocalist. I didn't like a lot of the Ringo songs for the longest time because of that. And when I heard this song and Ringo did that opening line, it's like, "What would you think if I sang out of tune? Would you come and walk out on me?" I'm like, "Hey, is he making fun of himself?" I was like, "Oh, is he admitting he's not a good singer?" I'm like, and then after that, I'm like, "Okay, I think I respect you, Ringo, for admitting that." And then over time, I grew to really like Ringo. I think he's just like the very likable, peaceable Beatle who probably the weakest vocalist, but he has some of the most fun songs. And yeah, this is one that's another one of my favorites on the album. On my ranking, I'm gonna group it with Sergeant Pepper and say like the two-parter is in my top 5.
Can I do that too?
This one. I love the high note at the end. I think that's what makes the song great and arguably probably Ringo's best vocal work. We got I'm starting to get some interesting comments here. Sergeant Pepper is the most influential album of all time. So
yeah.
I can see that. That's
don't argue that.
That or Abbey Road I could see making the argument too.
I wouldn't say Abbey Road's really influential, in my opinion, because I think Sergeant Pepper was like, I'd say of any Beatle album, I'd say Sergeant Pepper is like the most influential for music.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to the next track. It's is this a hidden message in the title? Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Does that mean LSD?
Wait, can we say that on YouTube without getting flagged? That's a drug reference.
I don't care.
So yeah, this is one of my favorite songs on this album. Just the build up with the cellophane flowers of yellow and green towering over your head, and then it goes into and they're gone, dun dun dun. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Legit goosebumps every time. So yeah, I love this song.
Okay. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So far, it's funny. I said what I said in the beginning, and right now they're 3 for 3 on the album for me. This is another song that made my top 5. I love this song. I would say out of all the songs on the album, these first 3 songs aged so well for me, especially this song. I remember hearing this song as a kid and not knowing what it's about. And yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, John Lennon's vocals is so weird. It's like
Yeah.
high pitch. It's like this. I want. It was like the kids react to Beatles, and this kid was like, "Is he auto-tuned?" Which couldn't be any further from the truth because obviously,
It's just voice modulation. It's not auto tune.
yeah, no, but yeah, love. I just love the feeling. It's just so psychedelic. I mean, last album we had like "I'm Only Sleeping," "Tomorrow Never Knows," "Love You Too." We had like these big psychedelic songs on Revolver, and I mean, two by John Lennon, and John Lennon just keeps on going with the psychedelic songs, and it's far out, man. Really, I love the song.
Yeah, this is such a classic in the Beatles discography. I would venture to say maybe the most played song on the radio from this album. If not, maybe A Little Help with My Friends, maybe up there with it. And Day in Life, I don't know if that was a big radio play. It's obviously a well-known song. But I mean, this is, one of those songs I grew up hearing on the radio, of course, besides the album. I mean, it's a huge song for them. And one of their best psychedelic songs they ever did, for sure. Thing you have to know about John Lennon, he was a big fan of Alice in Wonderland. That was one of his favorite books as a kid, by Lewis Carroll, I believe. And so this is basically him writing Alice in Wonderland in song. He's trying to take all the weird imagery that you get from Alice in Wonderland and write this song, kind of building this kind of weird Wonderland world, cellophane, whatever, marmalade skies, So he's using this very psychedelic type of language to kind of describe it all. So knowing that, it makes sense. It's like, yeah, this is like Lewis Carroll's Wonderland kind of thing. Yeah, so it's really cool lyrically. Doesn't make any. It's kind of nonsensical, but it's really cool. Liked all the imagery that he's painting. Yeah, voice is great. Oh my gosh, bass playing is really good too. There's a really good bass playing that throughout the song, and yeah, that chorus so catchy. Definitely one of the best on the album.
This song is a trip. It starts out with that psychedelic keyboard at the beginning. It kind of sets the mood, and then you hear John Lennon's voice comes in. You got some great bass playing from McCartney underneath that. And then it switches up into the chorus section, and you get that do, do, do. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Da, 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 da. And it's like, you're just like, what's happening right now? Like, it's just, the whole song just seems like it's rotating around you. Like the song is like swirling around your head. I don't know how to that's the best way I can describe it. It's like the song is like turning around. It's because of all the weird effects that are on the song.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're listening to this song, but it's like shifting and changing at the same time. And it's like, what is going on right now? Like, the fact that this was recorded in 1967 is crazy. Because I don't think anybody had ever really heard anything like this before whenever it came out. This one really must have blown people away whenever they heard it. Because you listen to this and it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Like, the first time you hear it, it's a little off-putting, but then you keep listening to it and you're like, this is really good. Like, I see what you're going for now. This is cool.
All right. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Probably a contender for one of the trippiest Beatles songs. I will admit there's a cover version of this song I like better. I actually prefer the Elton John version.
Really? Okay.
I think the only thing I don't like about the Beatles version, I still think it's a great song. John Lennon's vocal modulation does get on my nerves in the verses. I'm not the biggest fan of that styling of vocal. He comes off as very whiny, which is why I favor the way Elton John sings it. But I can't deny how cool this song is on a technical level. It adds to the trippiness of the song, and that's probably why I still think it's a great song, even though vocally it's not my favorite. It just adds to the trippiness of the song. I love the chorus. People can interpret it all they want. I personally don't think it's a drug song. I think it's just John Lennon being weird. But I love. I know Scott, you're not the biggest fan of Yellow Submarine the movie, but one of my favorite scenes in Yellow Submarine the movie is where they use this song, and it's just the trippy psychedelic imagery. And I think it adds to that movie very, very well. It's not in my top 5, but it's a really strong honorable mention.
All right.
I will say, even though I don't like the movie Yellow Submarine, there are definitely sequences that I thought were good. The Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was one of them, and the other one is the Eleanor Rigby sequence, where it's going through London and it's just kind of showing the dreary everyday life of London. Those are the 2 sequences I really liked in Yellow Submarine. The rest I was like, I could do without this movie.
All right, well, we got a couple comments from Jacob Collins, 3D Movie Cinema.
Boy, joy.
What's up, guys? 3D Jake. Wow, Ryan is in here. He really scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Wait. Hang on. I gotta. Oh, bless me. I'm sorry. Okay.
Whoa.
Sorry about that.
We got beef here in the chat tonight.
Oh, man. So I must confess, I'm not a Beatles fan. I never heard a song that I liked. Oh, wow. Are you serious on that, Jacob, or are you just trolling?
Okay, go listen to Day Tripper and tell me that you don't like any Beatles songs. Okay,
He's trolling, Ryan.
Go listen to Day Tripper.
Black Widow. To quote Black Widow from Avengers Endgame, he's kidding.
He probably is. Well, let's move to the next song. It's getting better.
Yeah, this is another one that I just love. I love it so much that I'll just throw it on randomly when I just feel like it's like, let's listen to Getting Better again, because it's that good. And I just like, especially at the part where it's like getting so much better all the time, like especially at the middle and then at the end. And I love the little break at, I guess, the bridge it's called, where it's it gets a little psychedelic but not too much. But this is one of my favorite songs on this whole album. Like I said, it's so good. I go out of my way to listen to it off of the album. I just pull the single and I listen to it. I'm like, yep, this is one of the best ones on here.
Yeah, this is where the album kind of loses me a little bit. I'm not a fan of this song, to be honest. I don't know. It just feels like Paul McCartney had a lot of great songs on the last album, but for the most part, I'm not a fan of his songs on this album. This is one of the ones I don't really care for. It's just, I don't know. Just for this bold and experimental album, it just doesn't sound like an experimental song, especially after Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. It just sounds like a song that would be on one of their earlier albums, like with the Beatles or Beatles for Sale. The one thing that I really don't like about it is in the middle where it's like, I used to be cool to my woman, I beat her and kept her apart from things that she loved. I hate those lyrics so much. I hate it. It's like one of those songs where it's like those lyrics like really made me not like the song. And yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really care for the song that much.
I can't blame you for that.
Yeah, it's a weird lyric. I agree.
I don't want to hear that on a Beatles song. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry, Ryan.
No. I mean, I just got off a stream where I talked about how I hated the movie Election because there's a whole subplot in that movie where Reese Witherspoon's character does it with one of the teachers. So I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the song. It's so catchy, so darn catchy. I kind of almost was kind of agree with Nick on that. I feel like this could have worked like on the Help album even. Like it feels like almost like it could work on an earlier Beatles album. It's not experimental as the other songs on this album, I guess is what I'm saying. It feels just like a really good old catchy number that the Beatles do, and they do so well and make hits out of. I love the guitar on here, and I don't know if Scott's ever played this on guitar. It's a fun song on guitar. I love that note, that high note. that he strums. Oh, it's such a cool note. It's fun to play. Yeah, and I just love that. Oh, it's so catchy that it's getting better all the time. And then, of course, it's a positive, upbeat song that Paul's writing. Of course, that's Paul's personality. And of course, John comes up with the line, "It can't get much worse," which kind of shows you John's more negative kind of personality. So that's what Lennon and McCartney work so well together, because Paul comes up with this, it's getting better, this positive stuff, and John can contrast it with his negative feelings. I can't get much worse or whatever, and it's like, oh, it works so well together. And then that getting so much better all the time. Oh man, vocally amazing. The better, better, better. Oh, vocally amazing. Great song.
I love the opening to this, that chord. Bum, 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 ba-da. What's interesting is the production behind that chord. It's a mixture of George Harrison's guitar and two of the other Beatles one of them is holding down the chord on the piano, and then George Martin is hitting the strings inside with a hammer. So I think that's kind of interesting how they get that sound.
That's a cool sound.
Of course, it's a McCartney song, so McCartney wanted to make a song about getting better, so he wrote about what he considered to be bad boy things, which was just getting pissed at school and being upset at his father or whatever. And then he asked John to write a verse, and John's was a bit more dark, shall we say. I agree with Nick. I don't like hearing that. But the reason that John put it in there is because John had some bad press for something he did when he was younger, and I think he wanted to put it in there as a way to apologize and say that was wrong. So I hate having to hear that line in this song, but I get why he put it in there. When I first read that lyric, I guess the lyrics are on the back. I remember when I first heard this, I'm looking at the back, seeing that lyric, and just thought, oh gosh, this is a product of its time. But I guess the reason it's on there is good. It's just, I don't know. I'm also with Nick that hearing that line is very off-putting, but I do like the rest of the song, and I love, even though when that lyric comes in, it's cringe, but I also like when that lyric comes in, you get the sitar entering in. I like that part. But production-wise, very interesting song, very bouncy, and my favorite part is just that bump, 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 bump. I think it's very interesting how they got that sound.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it. This is another great song on the album. This one made my top 5. I love the bounciness of it. It's got some great chords on the piano. I love the harmonies. The chorus is really good. I love Paul's vocals and the writing that John and Paul both compliment on this song. You bring up the one line, and I actually overlooked it when I first heard the song. I listened to it a second time because I remember Nick bringing it up. I'm like, okay, I don't remember this line. And then I hear it again. I'm like, oh, I don't know how I missed this the first time. I think when you look at the context of the song, if you look at it on its own, it's messed up that it's in there. But in the context of the song, it's him realizing, okay, I did some bad things in the past, and now I'm striving to improve. And I think it adds to the message of the song, even though it's probably not a good thing to go around beating up women. But if you realize, you admit that it's wrong and you own up to it, the message is still good. So I don't have a problem with the line when in the context of the song. I do think it's a great song. It does feel weird that it's a line like that is in a song that's that upbeat. I guess I can see where you're coming from on that.
But then again, Maxwell Silver Hammer is a song about a serial killer that's basically a children's song.
Pretty much, yeah. We'll get to that when we review Abbey Road. And Maxwell Silver Hammer is a earworm. But yeah, I think this is a great song. I don't have any real issues with it. Now we go to Fixing a Hole. Maybe that's where John Lennon was when he beat his woman up. He was fixing the hole so he can get better.
Before the rain gets in.
Oh, gosh.
This is another good one. It's not as good as the other 4, but this is another good one. I don't know. I think it's for me. I think it's like between this and I think she's leaving home. That might be among the weaker songs for me. That's just
No,
my
no,
opinion,
no, no, no,
though.
no.
But it's not bad, but it definitely is a bit of a step down.
I actually think this is a little better than the last song on the album. I like it. It's a song that there's parts of it I like. I like the baroqueness of it with the harpsichord. I'm a sucker for the harpsichord and all that, so I'll give it that. There are parts of the song like ba 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 for a couple of years that weren't important yesterday. Like there were parts of the song that I like, but it's just like a song that I don't go back to because it can be a little boring at times. Like it's not really that exciting to me, like some other songs that the Beatles have done. Uh, it's not a top 5 song on the album, but it's good. It's a song I like.
Yeah, fixing a hole. There's the what do you call it? The rumor or the theory that it's about heroin addiction or something. But Paul says it's just about I think he bought this house in Scotland that was kind of run down, and he was fixing it up, and yeah, there was a hole that needed to be fixed, in the roof, and so I'm gonna say it's probably what Paul said, not about drugs, and but it's one of those things like we talked about. It feels like you can every song. It feels like, oh, that's a drug song. I'm like, not every song's a drug song. I don't know. They love saying that. Personally, like "Help from My Friends," it's a drug song. I'm like, it's not a drug song, but anyways, they'll say that about anything. As a total, yeah, I'm kind of like with like I guess Ryan and maybe what Nick was said. To me, it's one of the weaker songs here. It's just okay, but it's not one I really go back to outside this album. I never listen to the song. It's one of their weaker songs in the discography that I just never really cared that much for.
I think this is a really cool song. I like how it opens up with that harpsichord. And Ringo's drumming. It's just kind of like a jaunty little song, but then it kind of like this kind of progressively gets more unhinged as the song goes on. I love George's guitar riff that he plays under like the bow 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 down 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 down. And then I love his guitar solo on it. It's so just odd, the guitar solo on this song. The guitar tone, I don't know how he got that tone on the guitar for this, but it's just like this comes out of left field. Like, what am I listening to right now? And then when you like pair that with just like the McCartney's vocals and just the sound of this song, it's just like it almost sounds like McCartney is going mad on this song. Like it's him gradually more going crazy or whatever. Like I kind of always imagine fixing a hole where the rain gets in, being kind of like I don't know, like something's going on with his mind, which drugs, I guess. But like I kind of feel like it's I guess the song is kind of about after effects of drugs. I don't know. It just seems like the song just kind of gets gradually more and more just kind of unhinged as it goes along, and it's a really cool little art piece.
All right. I really like this song as well. I really like the production on it, particularly the harpsichord that Scott mentioned. I would say it's one of the weaker songs on the album. I will admit that. I don't love this compared to the top songs on the album, but it's not going to hurt my score on the album. I think it's a good song in its own right. This isn't one I'm going to go back to compared to the best songs on the album. And then our next song is She's Leaving Home.
So, like I was talking about, this is kind of one of the weaker ones for me. It's too light for me, I guess. It's kind of like too singy songy for me. I can't put like my finger on the exact term. It sounds nice, but I don't know, it just felt like it didn't belong here almost weirdly.
Okay. funny enough, this is the second time that my favorite song on the album is "To You," one of the weaker songs on the album. One of my favorites was "For No One." Now it's like my favorite song on the album. She's leaving home, so definitely a lot of disagreements on the Beatles right now. To me, this is the best song on the album. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock on a Saturday. It's beautiful. And I was dog watering on Paul McCartney those last two songs, and this is like the best song on the album. So he like makes like to me one of the weaker songs of the album, but then he like pulls up and is like, hold on, let me cook. And he makes like the best song on the album. This is so heartbreaking because it's based on a true story of a girl who ran away from home. It's heartbreaking, and the part where it's like, she's leaving home. Bye bye. It gets me. It gets me every time. I'm like this is like what the Beatles is. This is like what the Beach Boys, God only knows, is what the Beatles. This is heartbreaking, and it gets to me every time I listen to it.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Nick. This is one of my favorite Beatles songs. I absolutely love this song. It's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever. One of the best discoveries I've ever had listening to the Beatles album, and first time hearing this song, going, "What is this song? How come I've never heard this song? Like, it's not a hit. Well, how is this not like a big hit? Like, to me, this should be like a #1 hit song. Like, it's so good. It's one of my favorite. To me, it's probably the best hidden gem song. Like, if you don't know the Beatles, you probably never heard the song before, unless you heard this album, and then you would hear it. Because it's just never, as far as I know, it just never got played on the radio. You know, all this kind of, it's so amazing. Yeah, I don't know, what is that, like a harp? It sounds like a harp or something. So beautiful. The orchestra music, so beautiful. I love, when, you know, like, 5 o'clock when the day begins, and then the orchestra. So good. Paul McCartney killing on the vocals, so good. Yeah, it tells a story. I love the storytelling. You get this whole story of this, which is based off a true story. Paul McCartney saw a news article about a girl that ran away with another guy. It's a real person, and from the parents, and and all this, and the were kind of almost confused, like, why did she leave? We gave her everything she could ever have, and all that, and the song kind of goes through that of the parents during the chorus is like, she's, what did we do that was wrong? Is leaving. I didn't know it was wrong. Home. We gave her the best of her lives, however, she's leaving home because living alone. She's been living alone for so many years. So even though she had a really nice house, all the stuff she can have, still was lonely. It's so good lyrically, and like Nick said, it's a heartbreaking song. I agree. That's what I kind of love about it. It's from the parents' point of view. I feel bad for the parents. Like your kid ran out on you, and you're like, why? What happened? Everything is so good about the song.
And not only that, but it was on your top 5 deep cuts in '67.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
It was.
This is the spiritual successor to Eleanor Rigby. I really think it is.
Yeah.
Yes, Eleanor Rigby has the orchestra. This has the orchestra. It's about lonely people. This is about a lonely person. And I feel kind of what's important about this song is that Paul McCartney did something that was very unheard of at the time. At the time, all the rock and roll records were like, screw the establishment. Don't listen to what your parents say. Be a free thinker. Like, this song sympathizes with the parents, which is a side and a stance not really taken very often. But at the same time, Paul McCartney kind of also points the finger back at the parents and says, like, even though I'm sympathizing with you here, you have to make sure you know what you're doing, because the parents, every time John sings as the parent, like Paul always sings the "She is leaving home." That's one of the things I really like about the song is when he hits that high note. But then John comes in as the parents, and he says stuff like or it might be a different part I'm thinking of, because there's a part where it's like, how can she treat us so thoughtlessly? How can she do this to me? It's like, you're worried, but like you're not. It doesn't sound like you're very worried about her. All you're worried is about yourself right now. And like maybe if you were a little more concerned about your daughter, that like maybe she wouldn't have ran away.
Yeah.
So lots of interesting discussion to be had about the lyrics of this song. If anyone wants to know how the story ends in real life, they actually did find her and she did go home. But just a heartbreaking story, very wonderfully orchestrated, oddly enough, by somebody who wasn't George Martin. George Martin was unavailable to score this song, so somebody else did. And apparently when George Martin heard the playback, he was upset that he wasn't available to do it because he wished he would have. So he really liked the song. But this is one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah, I love this song too. This was my pick for the best discovery on this album. This song is absolutely beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. The storytelling in this song is so good. I was utterly speechless listening to this song. To me, this is almost as good as Yesterday, as far as like high quality Paul McCartney Beatles songs. I love the strings on this song. Some of Paul's best vocals I've ever heard, especially on the chorus. The fact that this was based on a true story, I think makes the song all the more sadder. But I think this is a beautiful song. Easily in my top 5. Well, we close out side 1 with, I can see this one being a divisive one. Being from the benefit of Mr. Kite.
And now we are back to our regularly scheduled program. This song feels like it belongs on this album. This song is so much fun. Being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, it was like I hear it and I'm like, okay, now we're back. Like this is the surreal stuff that I was signing up for with this one. Great piece of business right here.
Yeah, it's an okay song for me. It's I'm sorry, Ryan. Me and you
I'll
are
listen to that over. She's leaving on tonight. I'll take Mr. Kite every day.
I know me and Ryan are just not on the same page.
Me over here who likes both songs.
Yeah, at least Scott's there to agree with me on the songs I like.
If anybody says they like the songs on this album, I'll agree.
Yeah. Hey, watch our Sounding Him by the Pound video, because there's a lot of agreeing on that video. Shameless plug there, but hey.
But is it any fun if everybody agrees on everything, though?
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, we should have had Adam from What the Gym on for Mardi Gras.
I mean, imagine like he comes like right after I did my big rant, like banging the table and all that. He's like, "Oh, I actually quite like that song." Okay, back to my review on this one though. It's a song on the album. It's not terrible. There's things I like about it, like the imagery with the Mr. K and all that. But to me, the sound effects, like bum 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 bum, I don't like that. It just feels like I'm at a. I know it's supposed to be I'm at a circus, but I don't know. It's a song that just so. It's like one of those songs where it's like it's trying too hard to be. Like, I was giving crap to Getting Better for not being experimental enough. The song is like it's trying too hard to be experimental, and it just I think John Lennon lost the plot on this one, in my opinion. It's good, but it's a song that I never go back to.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say this is one of my least favorite Beatles songs. Oh. I really do not like this song. Of course, John wrote it because he looked at a poster of a circus. And it's almost like, I think lyrically, like almost word for word for what the poster said or something like that, pretty close to it. So he kind of just grabbed it, so it's experimental. It's different, again, they're doing experimental different things. So that's why it gets here. But I don't know. It just lacks anything I like about the Beatles, like the great melodies, great harmonies. It didn't have any of that. Great, great music, instrumentation. I don't know. Everything I like about the Beatles is not in this song, so it's just to me one I don't care.
Yeah, I'm kind of with that. I'm kind of with Jason, but like I think the way John sings on it and the I think the visual in my head, the lyrics are good enough for me to give it like an okay status. But I'm kind of in agreement with you, Jason, on that. Like none of the harmonies are on the song, and it's like what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the most positive on this song, aren't I?
Well, Ryan was.
So first off, John Lennon is at an antique store and finds this circus poster. He buys it and is like, let's just write a song off of this. Pretty much takes the lyrics almost word for word off the poster. He changes a few of them. Apparently the horse's name was like Xanthus or something, and he's like, that's too stupid. I'm going to make it Henry instead. Henry the horse is catchier. But just the sound of this puts you in like John Lennon's demented circus or whatever for just a few minutes, and it's like it's so weird, but it's cool at the same time. And like apparently John Lennon had the exact like carnival organ sound in his head that he wanted, and he said to George Martin, like I want to be able to smell the sawdust that's dripping from this organ right now when I play it. So George Martin comes up with the organ sound. He plays it perfect. You get that cool intro, like do 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 do, but and there's like a drum roll, like a from Ringo, and then it's like almost sounds like a bomb. It changes feels several times. It's like for the benefit of Mr. Kite, there's going to be a show tonight. We're going to have trampolines. Like the Hendersons are there to be our donors or whatever. And then I love the line. It's the tagline for the album. It's printed here on the bottom right of the album. It says, "A splendid time is guaranteed for all." That always caught my eye whenever before I even listened to the album. So I was looking over the album when I first got it before I played it, and it said, "A splendid time is guaranteed for all." Like that really caught my eye. My favorite part is in the middle and at the end. But it's like right now we're going to talk about the middle section. Whenever he says that Henry the horse is going to dance the waltz, and it switches to like a 3/4 waltz time. And you get all these trippy circus sound effects, which I'm going to tell you how they did that. Because I think kind of even more interesting than the song itself is how they did those trippy circus sound effects. Apparently George Martin and some recording engineers went to like a carnival and just recorded a bunch of sounds from the carnival. And then whenever they got back, George Martin took the tapes, laid them all out on the ground, cut them up, threw the pieces of tape in the air, and take them back together in a random order. And that's the sounds that you're hearing in the middle and at the end of the song. Like, I just think that's really weird. Like, how do you come up with that? And then at the end, it does that again. And it's just like, what am I listening to? But at the same time, it's like, what am I listening to? I've never heard anything like this before. And I don't know. I like how the end is like that one circus sound effect that's just like. It's such a weird way to end the first side, but it's so goofy and fun.
All right. Well, am I with Nick and Jason or Scott and Ryan? I'm team Scott and Ryan on this one. I really like this song.
That's okay. Me and Nick are okay.
We'll live.
Yeah, I didn't know the backstory about the circus. Like, I thought Mr. Kite was just the title of a play that John Lennon was watching, and that's what the song was about.
It's a circus.
But yeah, the circus makes sense with all the carnival noises and stuff. But whatever this song is, I think this song's pretty fun. I think John Lennon you can tell he was having a fun trying to word all the imagery together on this song. I do like the experimentation on it. It didn't quite make my top 5, but it's another really strong honorable mention. Another memorable track on this album. All right. Got a couple comments. Nick says she left home for the walrus. That's
Well, goo.
I like this song talking about Mr. Kite because it reminds me of a satire living of an underpaid carnival worker. like it works because it seems like he hates doing everything for Mr. K, like me going to work every day.
So you're interpreting the lyrics as sarcastic. So somebody's just like, for the benefit of Mr. Kite, there will be a show tonight on Trampoline. Yippee! We've been some days in preparation. A splendid time is guaranteed for all. And tonight, Mr. Kite is topping the bill. Goody, goody, gumdrops and hurrah. Like sarcastic like that.
I don't know why, Scott, but when you just sang it that way, it sounded like you were singing like David Bowie did on his first album.
All right. Well, now
Uncle Arthur loves his money.
now we're flipping the record. Side one is done. You're probably wondering, well, Revolver, George Harrison opened up that album. He was the tax man. Is George Harrison going to be on this album? Is he going to sing a song?
I think George wondered the same thing when he was making this album.
Oh, here we go. Here's our George Harrison contribution, Within You, Without You. And this one I bet is going to be divisive too.
Yeah.
Sitar mania running wild all over this song. No, I like this one. Like I said, it fits the surreal stuff in Revolver that I did like. It's not my favorite, but I did like it. I'll be interested to see what everyone else says.
Let's say me and Jason have been in mostly in agreement in this video, but this could be the one that me and Jason would be the most divisive on. I love the song. I'm the most positive on this song. This is my second favorite song on the album. Most people will be like, "What?"
It's because you're a Harrison guy. I get that.
I love this song. And I love.
He did Here Comes the Sun. I mean, what's not to like?
Oh yeah.
I mean, Taxi was my favorite on the last album, and Within You Without You is my favorite on this second favorite on this album.
Yeah.
I meant to say, this song is awesome. It's like, it's okay. Everything that I loved about Love You Too from Revolver, and to me, I think he just added a just extra layer of depth to it. We were talking about the love that all was shared. To me, I love that instrumental break in the song. I know everyone's like, "What do you mean?" That's like doesn't even sound like the Beatles. I'm like, that's what I love about it. When people tell me like this is the most influential album and not this, they're going like uncharted territory that they're doing things different. This is the song I'm thinking of. I don't think Getting Better or Fixing a Hole. I think this song especially. I'm like, if you use the art, this is why I'm like, why I can see why Scott thinks it's the most influential album. If I was a band in '67 and I heard this song, I'd be like, what the frick am I listening to? This is mind blowing. I have to make an album better than this. I love this song. I have when I first heard it. My dad thought I was crazy for liking it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I love this song. This has always been a song that I love, and I will love it from now to the day I die. I love this song.
Yeah. So what you gotta know about this song is interesting is that George Harrison, the last album, Revolver, he put up 3 songs. The first time we ever got 3 songs from George Harrison on an album. And he was cooking. I mean, Taxman, open up the album. I mean, amazing rock song. Love You Too, I thought was an underrated, really great song. And what's it called? I'm forgetting the third.
I want to tell you.
I think it's an underrated song. Really good. 3 solid songs. Man, it's like George Harrison is just cooking really well. Like, he is doing so good. There's something happened here. He really got into Indian music really big time. He was, I think, spending more time doing the guitar thing and all this. I don't know. And he just wasn't putting out good stuff. And it sucks because, man, he was doing, I mean, even Rubber Soul, love the stuff he's putting out. And then we get to this album. They're like, hey, George, we need a song from you. And so George gives them only a Northern song. as the song for the album, and they go, it's not good enough for this album. So they scrap, which will come on Yellow Submarine, maybe. Comes on a little later. They eventually put it on an album later, but they thought it was too weak for this album. So then he comes up with the second song, Within You, Without You. And they say, okay, we'll put this on there. So George only gets one song on this. He usually gets at least two, sometimes three, as we saw in Revolver. He only gets one song, and it's my least favorite song on the album by far. One of my least favorite Beatles songs by far. This is like top 10 worst Beatles song. It is so boring. It bores me to tears. It is way too long. It drags. It should be a couple minutes shorter. Nick loves this. I'm the opposite. I despise this song.
I could see why. I'm not gonna come here and be like, Jason, you don't quite get the genius of the song. This is like one of the songs where I'm like, I shouldn't like this. The song goes on for almost 5 minutes, but yet I love it, kind of thing. So I'm not offended. I'm not like, oh, Jason, what the hell? I'm like, fair enough. It is weird. It is long, and it is slow. So I get you completely. I get where you're coming from. I just want to keep saying that. I don't think I'm judging you at all. I love it, but I'm not saying everyone should love it. This is not a song for everyone at all. My dad agrees with you. Every time it comes on, my dad always skips it unless I'm listening with him. He's like, you're with me, Nick. I got to listen to this song. I'm like, yeah, I want to listen to this song. And he's like, I'd rather skip it, but since you like it, I'm going to listen to it. So.
I mean, we'll hear Scott and Jacob here, but I would venture to say most people like the song. I'm in the minority not liking it, but
yeah.
It's divisive.
Well, Nick in the comments agrees with you.
Oh yeah, and Paul from Magic Chippy also hates the song as well, I think.
Okay.
So this is George's one song on the album. Very famously, he and Ringo have both stated that John and Paul were so involved with the making of this album, and he felt like he and Ringo were kind of sidelined, and that they often would just sit and play chess while the other two sat around just thinking about ideas for the album. And this particular song is very interesting in the fact that it's bringing a world music element to the album. Like, we've seen sitar on some of their songs before, like on Norwegian Wood. You saw a bit more of the world music influence on something like Love You Too. But this one, it's all out, like, Indian classical music. Like, the only Beatle who's even on this track is Harrison, and he's only singing. The rest of it is they brought in some professional Indian musicians into the studio. Apparently, they even, like, lit some candles and brought some carpet in there to kind of make the mood more spiritual, because George Harrison was into, like, the Eastern religion at the time. And the other Beatles were there. They didn't perform on the song, but they just kind of sat and watched as they performed on, like, the traditional instruments, and George Harrison sang. This used to be my least favorite song on the album. I don't think it's my least favorite on the album anymore. I actually like the song now. It's definitely my favorite of George's 3 Indian-sounding songs. Very experimental. Just the fact that, like, George would be bringing, like, unfamiliar sounds from over the world into this album and bringing them to a British audience. And what I think is really funny is how he has all these heavy-handed religious, or like Eastern religious lyrics in the song, and then he ends the song with the sound effect of people laughing, almost where he's like, "Don't take this song too seriously." But yeah, it's really it's not going to be in my top 5, but I like all the songs on this album, and so this one's still really good.
All right. I'm in the camp that also really likes this song. I think of the Indian flavored songs, overall, I like Love You Too better. I think it's more memorable. But I do respect the heck out of this song, especially for the experimentation. The instrumental break, especially, I thought was phenomenal. Seeing, like, hearing the sitars and the orchestra blend together, I thought that was a really cool blend. It's not my favorite song on this album. It doesn't compete with my top 5, but again, like the instrumentation on this song is so good. It's another honorable mention.
Another interesting thing about this song is that all you people out there who say, like, if a song only has 2 chords, it's not musically great. This song only has 1 chord. This whole song is built on a C major chord. Sometimes they'll add like a 7th in there, but it never changes from a C major chord.
Well, it's like Keep On Chugling by CCR was only built on 1 chord, and that's one of the best songs on the album.
Pretty much. It's not how many chords you have in the song, it's what you do with it. Speaking of which, I may have said this before, but you know what the difference between a pop musician and a jazz musician is?
What?
A pop musician will play 4 chords for thousands of people. A jazz musician will play thousands of chords for 4 people.
Well, we do have some jazz instruments in the next song. Speaking of, heavy clarinet on it. When I'm 64.
And I love the clarinet on this song. Like this is another one of, this is going to be in my top 5 for sure. Like this is just, it's the earworm for me. This is the one. Like immediately after I finish listening to it, I'm at work. I'm like shelving books, and I'm like, will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Like I'm literally working and I'm humming this song to myself. So yeah, this is top 5 for sure for me.
I'm sorry, Ryan.
Oh wow!
I'm pulling out the trash. There's 2
Okay,
trash
you-
songs on this
You
album,
need
and
to
this is one of
explain
them.
yourself, sir.
I think this is the worst song on the album.
Okay.
Oh, I need to hear this one now.
I hate this song. It's way too childish. It's way too granny for my liking.
There's an even singier song in like He's Leaving Home. That is somehow more airy than this. At least this one has substance.
I don't know the flute, the clarinet, the woodwinds, the way Paul's singing on it. It pisses me off every time I
He
listen
sings
to it.
like Paul. Like what are we even talking about here? He sings like Paul
I'm
McCartney.
sorry, I don't like this song. He just has this arrogance to his voice for some reason. Like he sounds like he's singing for his like great grandmother. Like Ray Davies complained that Eleanor Rigby was a song that's for his primary school teacher, but this is the song that I can hear him being like, here's a song that I wrote for you. When I get older, losing my head, many years ago. John Denver version, way better, a million times better. I'll listen to that much more than this one. This song, I can't stand this song. It irks me. It just has this sound to it I do not like. I'm sorry, Brian, but I don't like this song. I hate this song.
I can't speak to the John Denver one. I've never heard it, but I do love it.
I'm sorry, I can't stand the song.
Who knew Ryan and Nick was turning into the musical equivalent of Siskel and Ebert tonight?
I know. I should have grabbed my popcorn.
It's like
I've been pretty docile. I've been kind of quiet here. I'm like, okay, this is nice. Like, okay, and then I'm like, yo, what?
I know that you really came out.
I mean, I'll say this is probably the most interesting discussion we've had on a song since "Vital Signs" by Rush.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ryan. I can't stand this.
I mean, it's your taste, so I can't fault you for that. We just agree to disagree. That's fine.
Of course.
I'm so glad Nick is going right after Ryan. It makes it so. Not only makes it entertaining, but also Ryan can go after Nick and doesn't have to go after me.
I don't know. I'm
the one. I'm your patsy, pretty much, Jason.
I'm surprised. I'm
Like,
surprised Scott wasn't the one who's been defending these songs. Like I was
I'm
expecting.
defending every single one of these songs. I'm just waiting for my
Yeah.
turn. I'm not.
Yeah,
I,
but-
I will
If
say.
we come to a minefield, you hand me
Oh.
a hammer and be like, "Go see which one is live out there."
Yep,
So I'm there
exactly.
like, ding, 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 ding.
Yep,
This
yep, you're
good.
the
Ding,
test.
ding,
You
ding,
test the
ding.
field.
That's good.
Yeah.
Ding,
Yeah.
ding.
I will say though, for
Well,
better.
this isn't like Led Zeppelin's Presence where Nick gave it a 10 and I gave it a 2.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
You gotta
I need
watch.
to
That
go
was
back.
that was a funny review. That's a.
Yeah,
well, listen
I'll
to the
admit-
album first, but then.
Yeah, looking back at it, it's like a 9 out of 10 for me now.
Yeah. Not well. There's. I don't even remember half the song. T for One. Such a boring song. Anyway,
One is so
I'm gonna
bad.
for better or for worse, Nick and Ryan's vibe on this video is just hilarious.
It is.
Oh, I love it though.
I
mean,
I realize
great.
I realize that I've been running over Jason, so please, Jason, go ahead.
All
I
right,
do
all
apologize.
right, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, it's okay. It's definitely to me again one of the weaker songs on the album, and much weaker than what's on the past 3 albums. Let's say, that's what hurts this album for me. It's like, is this the best we can do? Surely you can do better than this, Paul. I think kind of what Ryan was saying. I think the clarinet is actually like probably the best part. It's kind of whatever that instrument is that's playing throughout it. And there's some cool parts of like when he's like, I wish I could remember the lyrics, but he goes, but you probably know he's like, na, 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 na. I don't know. It's this one really cool part in the song. Besides that, yeah, I'm kind of.
Oh yeah, every summer we can rent a cottage in the Isle of Wight if it's not too dear.
Yeah, and then that next part is what I like. Bum, 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 ba, da, da, da. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Whenever he goes like, "We
Yeah.
shall scrimp and save," and John's like, "We shall scrimp and save." It kind of like harmonies there.
Yes, that's the coolest part of the song. So to me, I'm like, I probably maybe like it a little bit better than Nick, but not as much as Ryan. So I'm kind of like right in the middle there.
Nick, you're crazy. You can
Thank
have
you.
your opinion. You can have your opinion
Thank you.
on this song, but I love this song. I've loved it since the first time I heard it. Like, it's sweet, it's cute. For crying out loud, it's romantic. Like, have a heart. I'm not trying to personally attack you. I promise.
Have a heart. It's maybe if I'm like 80 years old, I would like this, but I'm young. I'm a young guy. This isn't for me. Maybe if I'm like 1,000 years old, I would have a feeling with it, but I'm sorry, Scott.
Elvis Country. I'm 1,000 years old.
No, it's 10,000 years old.
Yes, if I'm as old as Elvis is on that,
If you're as old as Elvis.
I don't know why I accidentally
Well,
referenced
in
that.
the words of David Crosby on "I Almost Cut My Hair," I'm beginning to feel like an old man. Like, I don't know, like just being like, "Are you still gonna need me when I'm 64?" It's just like, oh, good grief. Like, that's nice, it's sweet, it's caring, and I like that this is one of the first songs that Paul McCartney ever wrote. Back when the Beatles did their concerts in their early days, if the power ever went out, Paul McCartney would hop on the piano and play this song. So they'd had it in their repertoire for a long time. It's just they finally decided to record it, and Paul McCartney used some effects to make it sound different. He recorded it in a lower key and then sped it up so that he would sound like he was younger, to get the idea of a young lover who's like, "Are you still going to need me when I'm old?" I love the jazz band behind it, especially that clarinet. And I like the like that whenever he does that. And I like the little trade-off that Jason was talking about. And I like the da da da. And if you say the word, I can stay with you. And then there's like bells in the background, and then the clarinet da 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 bang bang ba da da da. I don't know. I feel like, even though Nick was kind of clowning on it, saying that like this is an old people song, I feel kind of like Paul knew what he was doing when he wrote this, because like Paul's dad was a jazz musician, so this is kind of the kind of music he'd be listening to growing up. But B, I feel like Paul McCartney's trying to say like, hey, like the Beatles aren't just for the kids. Like, I'm trying to make some timeless music that even the older generations can enjoy as well with this song.
My only argument is that not many old people are going to want to buy the Beatles albums. so like they could
Work at the
maybe
library, you would be very surprised.
really. I mean, I'm talking about like in '67 though. Like, I will say, I mean, older people do listen to it now because
Well, yeah.
older
They
people
grew up
now,
with it.
Okay.
well,
Fair
the
enough.
younger ones. But
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying like back in '67, like a lot of older people hated the Beatles, so it wouldn't like be like maybe we should check out the Sgt. Pepper's album. So that's like my only argument against that claim. It's like how many old people were really listening to the Beatles in '67? Not many.
Well, I think this is a great song. I've always loved the song. I think I heard it on the radio one time, and I'm like, oh, this song's pretty cool. And then I watched the Yellow Submarine movie, and the song was in it, and there was this really cool psychedelic scene along with it that involved them crossing the Sea of Time, and then you see like them counting up to 64 in this very creative visual way. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a cool scene in the movie. I don't understand the criticism that I think John Lennon had against the song, and it's too granny. I think that's a demeaning term personally, because
Anya.
I mean, like, if granny means it's Paul trying to be sentimental, John, 2 albums ago you wrote "In My Life." That's a sentimental song you wrote. So you're shooting your argument in the foot there. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, I love this song. I love the clarinet. The jazz influence on this song is really cool. And yeah, I'm in agreement with Scott. I think it's a sweet love song. But I'm also in agreement with Nick. I actually do prefer the John Denver cover of this song. I actually think musically, even though I love the jazz influence on the Beatles version, I think overall, I think it works better as a country song. I like how John Denver interpreted the song, but not to discredit the Beatles. I think both versions are great, and this version still made my top 5. So I think it's both artists do a really good job on this song. It's just like, oh, there's a good there's 2 really good versions of this song.
The thing that really breaks me about this song, though, is that when Paul was actually 64, he went through an awful divorce.
Oh man, that's not
yeah.
good. All right, well, let's move on to the next track. Lovely Rita.
So this was another good one. I love the instruments that play here. I love how it starts with the guitar and it just maintains throughout. I think it's just outside the top 5 for me, but that's not a bad thing. I still really enjoyed it.
My opinion, this is the 3rd best song on the album.
Huh? Wow.
I love this song. When I first heard this album, I will admit I didn't really care for the song. It's one of those songs that kind of grew on me the more I listened to the album. I love this song. I like the bass playing on the song. I think the bass really good by Paul McCartney. I will say I don't think Paul McCartney's like one of the best bass players, like compared to like the Ox or Geddy Lee or whatever. But for the Beatles, he made some. I mean, for someone who didn't really want to play the bass when they first started forming the band, I gotta say he's a pretty good bass player, and I think he really underrated. Yeah, the bass playing's really good. First time I've ever really talked about bass on a Beatles song, but really good. I like the harmonies. Lovely Rita, Mita maid. Lovely Rita, Mita maid. I love the quirkiness of the song. Lovely Rita, Mita maid. Oh, I love it. And it's quirky, but in a way that I love. I don't know why I love it so much, but it has that. Sorry, it has that quirk that I absolutely love. But I'm definitely in the minority when I say it's one of the best songs on the album. Again, Within You, Without You, and Lovely Rita are like 2 very oddball picks for me.
Yeah, Lovely Rita. Interesting. The term meter maid is, I think, a very British term. I believe that we in America. So uh, I always love that. That's Lovely Rita, and I believe it's based off a true story where I don't know, got a ticket or something like that by meter maid, and her name was, and he's like, "Oh, what's your name?" Rita, and I don't know. I mean, who writes a song like the Paul?
McCartney.
He just obscure thing that happens, and somehow he writes the song. Kind of funny. Overall, it's like, again, to me, it's like, I don't love it, don't hate it. It's okay. I agree with Nick on the lovely Rita, Rita. Like, that's a cool part of the song, and Paul did some pretty good vocals here, the rocking vocal line with the lovely Rita, Rita May, whatever, blah blah. But to be honest, it's not a song I really go back to that often, so it's not a song I remember really well. So it's like I'm just trying to think of it in my brain. I'm having a hard time recalling the song because it's just not a song I listen to very often. It's like, it's okay, but it's not one that I go back to.
So this used to be my second to least favorite song on the album the first time I heard it, but the position has gone up so much since the more I've listened to this album. The first time I heard it, I'm like, what is this song? That's such a goofy concept. I fell in love with the meter maid or whatever. But it's like, it's fun. I love the piano in it, done by George Martin. It's kind of a similar thing that he did on In My Life, where he played it at like half speed and they sped it up later on. What I really love about this is a little ways through the song, you'll hear a little sound effect. Like whenever he says, like, she looked a little like a military man, there's this little sound effect that sounds like wah, 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 wah. You want to know what that sound is? And it makes me laugh every time I hear that sound now, whenever I heard what it was. John Lennon put a comb and a piece of wax paper and blew on it. And we went, and so I just laugh every time I hear that. So I'm like, I just imagine John Lennon with a comb and a piece of wax paper making that sound. It looks like that's on an actual album. Is somebody blow out a comb and a piece of wax paper? I don't know why I think that's so stupid, but it is. And I like, once again, the piano playing by George Martin. The song is just very catchy, very peppy and bouncy. I really like it.
Yeah, I really like this song too. It's not in like my top tracks on the album, but it is a really catchy song. I love the harmonies. The hook is really cool. Lovely Rita, meter maid. I like the bounciness of it, much like on Getting Better. This one's more goofy and over the top than the other song, but it's still a lot of fun. I think based on what I've heard behind the scenes, I can see this one being divisive as well. Good morning, good morning. Not the song from Singing in the Rain.
Good morning.
Oh, what a way to stay up late. Good morning to you. I like this one, and I did not think that I would. And again, it's kind of outside the top 5, but I actually did like it.
Yeah, it's the second song I thought was terrible on the album.
This one is a little more understandable.
Okay, I was a little afraid.
As long as you're not pulling that out on A Day in the Life, I'm fine.
I was afraid like it'd be like, oh, it's like another top 5 song for me on the album. I was afraid that was gonna happen with Ryan. I'm like, oh man, that's precedent for 2 of his top 5 songs, but thankfully that didn't happen. I would have felt really bad. Yeah, this is another song I thought was terrible. For one, that chorus. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Ah. I hate it. It's so obnoxious. It's like the beginning of the song, like good morning, good morning, good morning. Ah. Ugh. Just leaves me with
be an amazing song to wake up to.
I had this as my alarm in college.
Really?
Oh.
Now let me
tell
tell
you
you, you're getting up to turn it off pretty fast when you have a roommate. You don't want that bell blasting in your room at
No, yeah.
6 a.m. in the morning.
Oh man.
Oh,
Like, Scott, turn it off.
oh yeah.
Turn the Beatles off.
If I woke up to that song every morning, I'd be pretty pissed off. I'd be like,
Well,
dude,
what's really upsetting is that like it starts with the rooster crowing, so the first thing you got to hear is, and my goal would be as soon as I hear that rooster, to go hit that button before the good morning starts.
yeah. Even besides the chorus, I just think the way John Lennon sings on this track is terrible. Nothing to do, it's such a day. I know it's supposed to be like, cornflake ad or whatever he saw, whatever, and he's like, let's make a song about that. I don't really have much more to say. It's just this is another extremely obnoxious song to me.
Yeah, I believe this is John came with this idea from a cereal commercial, I want to say, and Good Morning, whatever. So it does play like a cereal commercial in a sense. So that's kind of the backstory of him coming up with this idea for the song. And I believe at the end there's like a bunch of animal noises, and John came up with the idea that each animal should like be bigger than the next one, or I can't remember how he said it, but like there should be a bigger animal noise after. So there's like some kind of I don't know what you want to call it.
It should swallow up the last one.
Yeah. So there's some kind of reason for the animal. Anyways, those are 2 bits I remember about the song. Yeah, it's another song where I'm like, it's okay. It's not top tier Beatles stuff. Like, again, it's funny. Like these last 4 or 5 songs, I'm like, none of these songs are good enough for Revolver or Rubber Soul or Help. Like, to me, they'd be like the worst songs on those albums, and they're all in a row here. All my favorite songs are like at the beginning of this album, and then we get into this very mediocre area where it's like every song I'm like, either I don't like it or I'm like, it's just an okay song that I never listen to outside this album.
So I like the song. It's not one of my favorites, but I still like the song, all right? I think it's kind of fun, all right? We got the rooster that starts it out, and yes, it is obnoxious and over the top, but you know what? That's kind of the charm of the song. The saxophone section is really good on this song. And if you look at musically what's going on in the song does not stay in the same time signature for like more than a few bars. It's just constantly changing what time signature it's in. So the song is, in a way, John Lennon has invented progressive rock. Now, I'm not really going to make that claim, but I'm just saying that, like, this song is very metrically confusing if you're a musician. I like the end where it's like you got the animal noises, which was inspired by the end of Pet Sounds. At the end of Pet Sounds, the last thing you hear is a train passing by and some dogs barking at the train. And John Lennon kind of wanted to do that, but like to the extreme and have more animal sounds. So you get like a cat, and then the cat, there's like a dog afterward, and then like there's like a horse, like horses going by, and like a lion. It's like the last thing you hear is like a hunting pack and horses, and they're like a bugle, and then there's a chicken, and the chicken goes babak, and the babak kind of morphs from it, like the chicken morphs into a guitar, if that makes any sense. It's like it like morphs into the guitar note in the next song. Yeah. And we're going to get to the Sgt. Pepper reprise, but I think it's funny that the transition in the song is that the chicken just morphs into the guitar note where it's like, it kind of like morphs into the guitar note. And then you get like John Lennon just kind of like, bye. I think that's funny.
All right. Well, I actually do like this song too. I get Nick's criticism that it can come off as obnoxious. If I was a very moody teenager and I listened to this song for the first time, I'd probably hate it too. I think it's kind of funny that, Jason, you mentioned that this song, I think John Lennon was inspired to write it because of a cereal commercial. If this song was in a cereal commercial, it'd be the best cereal commercial ever. Because usually those jingles in the cereal commercials get so annoying, but if this song was in a cereal ad, I'd be like, heck yeah, I'm gonna go buy this cereal.
I'm
Good
definitely
morning,
buying
good morning.
Beatles.
Beatles.
Beatles, yeah.
Put two Beatles together and you have John Lennon's glasses.
Oh, John Lennon's glasses. Ah!
Or Beatle mix.
Any teenage fan of the Beatles, teenage girl.
it's like I put two Beatles together and they look like John's glasses. Ah!
But yeah, I think the song is just goofy fun. I don't think it was designed to be like one of the top songs on the album, but I like it for what it is, and the animal noises at the end, I think, is just like the extra cherry on top that, yeah, you're not supposed to take this song seriously. It's fun.
No. It's just fun.
I will admit it's probably one of the weaker songs on the album, but it's still fun. All right, now we have the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band reprise.
I like this. This was fine. It just felt like an abridged. I mean, that's the point, I guess. It's an abridged version of the title track. I know that is the point. But if I want to listen to the title track, I'll listen to the title track. Like, this is fine. Like, this is fine and all. But it just felt like, I guess it just felt like it was just randomly there, I suppose.
That's what makes it an album.
No, I see what you're saying there. It just, like I said, like, we already have the title track. I don't need to hear like the express lane version of it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Ryan, actually. Funny,
That's a first for this video.
That's a rare feat. That's a rare
First time
feat
we-
tonight / this morning.
In the words of Paul McCartney in The Girl Is Mine with Michael Jackson, I don't believe it.
I mean, it's a fine track when it's like paired with the last track, A Day in the Life, but to me, it's just filler on its own, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't really. Daniel Hillard or whatever, you're wrong. They didn't steal Sgt. Pepper's Stones. You couldn't be any more wrong. They recorded their Satanic Majesty's Request before they even started making the album. So sorry to spoil it, but you're kind of wrong. Sorry to call you out there.
Nick is in a fighting mood tonight.
Nick is the biggest fan of that Stones album, so
Yeah. But yeah, I thought this was to me it's kind of fillery on its own, but it works in the context of the album though.
Yeah, there's nothing to say. It's just this unnecessary track that they threw in to tie in the concept. Nothing more than that.
Unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like this is how they're gonna close their show. Like Sgt. Pepper's have been performing this whole album, and like this is their big number, and they need to say goodbye so that they can perform their encore for you.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah.
what a day in the life is, the big encore. This is the last number, and then they're gonna perform their encore for you after that. I don't know. That's what makes this album an album. Is that you get this. I always love it whenever an album has like musical themes that come back later. Well, unless you're gonna have Hotel California, where you have the Wasted Time reprise right after Wasted Time, which makes no sense.
Right.
But that
right.
we'll talk about that if we ever review the Eagles. But I don't know. This I don't know. It kind of ties the album together. It's like here's a little callback, and instead of we hope you enjoy the show, it's like we hope you have enjoyed the show, and now it's time to go. I don't know. They're saying goodbye to you. You know, it's fun. Oh, real quick before you do talk, Jacob, I just remembered one thing. I'm pretty sure that this is where Jeff Lynne of ELO got the inspiration for that drum groove for "Don't Bring Me Down."
Makes sense.
I can see that actually. But I see where you're coming from, Jason, on whether it's an unnecessary track or not. I think if you're just listening to it on its own, I can definitely see that. in the context of the album, I think it works. I think it's a cool track that's reprised. I like the idea of Sergeant Pepper's coming back, saying goodbye. And I think this segues into A Day in the Life very well. I kind of wish the two were blended together. I think it might have made, I think, the transition a little better. Kind of like Sergeant Pepper with a little help from my friends. On its own, it's probably my least favorite on the album, but in the context, it's pretty good. All right. Well, now we're on the last track of the album. Probably the most acclaimed song on the album, too. That is A Day in the Life.
Yeah, this is top 5 for me. I love this song so much. I love the slow parts, how it starts off and then it builds and builds and builds, and then it gets to woke up, got out of bed, and it changes gears in terms of tempo so well, and that's it. It just I forgot this song was like on this album. I was like, is this on this? I thought like McCartney did it solo for some strange reason, but nevertheless, I love this song so much.
Yeah,
Big hot take.
it's a fine song. In my opinion, it's overrated.
Wine is fine. This is art. Like, what are we doing here?
People compare this album this song to like Bohemian Rhapsody and Stairway to Heaven. I'm like, I don't get it, to be honest.
I wouldn't go quite that far, but I mean, those songs are in a class of its own.
Like the John Lennon parts are good. Like I read the news today. Oh boy, I like it. It's good. I like the orchestration buildup. I think that's okay. But the part that annoys me the most is the Paul McCartney section. It sounds like I'm listening to a crappy 60s TV show theme that never was, starring Paul McCartney. And
it is. Yeah.
And
Of a TV show.
I can't with that. Yeah, it's like the part that really gets me. It's a decent song, but I don't know. To me, it's like, I mean, a lot of the Beatles hits I love, like not Sergeant Pepper, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, Yesterday. I love their hits. I think the hits are like one of the best aspects about them. But if you're asking me, to me, this is their most overrated song.
Yeah, I knew Nick was going to say that too, so it doesn't surprise me. That I always knew that was one of his hot takes on the album. Yeah, Day in Life, interesting song. John wrote the song. He's reading the newspaper and he kind of came up with these different stories he heard in the newspaper and wrote a verse about it. Guy got shot in the motor car, whatever. I believe it's supposed to be like John F. Kennedy or something. He talks about black holes, which is basically what do you call it? Potholes, but he calls it black holes, whatever. And it was in the newspaper that this road had so many potholes, you can fill the Albert Hall with it. So that's, I always felt that was weird. Like, what does he mean black holes? But it's like potholes, whatever. And so he's wrote a whole thing about that. And he writes about seeing a film, and John just finished doing, like I said, they kind of had a hiatus because they weren't touring or making a movie. So John did go and he was in a movie, I think How I Won the War or something like that, directed by the guy that Lester, who directed the Hard Day's Night in Hell. And I've never seen the movie. I've always wanted to see it because John Lennon talks to the camera in the movie, and John Lennon even says in the movie I'm gonna get killed someday or something like that. And it's so weird. Oh my god, like because he does get killed in real life. So it was just I've seen trailers and stuff.
Unfortunately, in the business, we call this foreshadowing.
Yes, it's a weird foreshadowing moment because I've seen some clips of the movie, but never. It's a kind of obscure movie. I don't know if it's hard to find. I think because I've never found it myself. But anyways, so that's what I saw a film today. About How I Won the War, whatever. That's kind of referring to that movie. Anyway, so it's interesting lyrically. Yeah, Paul McCartney's part. He wrote a song that wasn't finished, yeah, and they kind of said, hey, how about we throw your like unfinished song in the middle, which is such a weird idea. Yeah, because I feel like the song doesn't need the Paul McCartney part. It's kind of a weird interlude between John's whatever first, second verse, whatever, and then get into the third verse. The only, but and I'm just talking about the song, what it's about. But I say and I love this song. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. In my top 10 favorite Beatles song of all time. It's I'm kind of on that. I'm the typical fan that's like, yeah, it's a brilliant song. I love that beginning, that bum 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 bum. I read the news today. Oh, I love that so much. How that begins, the intro, the acoustic guitar, the keyboards. Oh my god. And overall, John's vocals great. I love his vocals. This. Oh my gosh, I knocked Nick off. I don't know what.
Neil Young down the stream.
I knocked him off with my pen.
His browser has problems sometimes. It probably just kicked him out.
Yeah, and so I love the "You Turn Me On." That part's so good. I love that. And then, like I said, I kind of with Nick a little bit on the Paul McCartney part. I'm not a big fan of that part because it's just it's so out there, left field. Like it doesn't really fit the song. It's just like, but the part I love and what makes the song so great to me is the orchestra buildup is so cool. So I've never heard that before in a song. I think it's such a kind of brilliant, kind of cool thing to have this. And if you hear the backstory, and Scott maybe he knows more about the backstory of that. How they had to get all these orchestra people together, and someone had to count it out, and it builds up, and then that is so cool. I love that, and then I love that it ends that way, and you get that boom, that last note. To me, that part is like epic, and that makes the song why I like it so much.
This is like the pinnacle of the Lennon-McCartney songwriting partnership, because after this, their partnership kind of falls apart and they kind of start writing their own songs. Like they'll do a few things together, but this is kind of the last big thing they do together. And this song is pretty much like 50-50, like 50% John, 50% Paul. You got John's part at the beginning with I read the news today, oh boy, which when you hear that, it's like, oh, cool. John Lennon decided to cover Young Americans by David Bowie. That was for you, Nick.
I don't. I love that.
I love that song.
John Lennon knew the future, and he was like, "I got to cover part of the song."
Yes. Anyway, he's got the I read the news today, oh boy part where he's just kind of talking about some things that happened. Kind of, this song is literally just day in the life, just opening up your newspaper and reading the dreary news, like, oh boy, like I just hate the news. The world's such a mess right now. And then like you get the little segue where he says, "I'd love to turn you on," which that most definitely is a drug reference. That most definitely is a drug reference. He wants to introduce somebody to drugs because the world's such a dreary mess with all the news. And then once they take the drugs, then it starts happening. So this is really where the Lennon-McCartney partnership comes into play. Paul said that because they have Paul's song about that we're going to get to later, and we have John's song. Like, how do we connect it? And Paul said, well, maybe we should do something with an orchestra. And he said, but I don't know what. And then John said that he wanted all of the instruments to start at the very lowest note that they could possibly play, and it was up to the musician's discretion, but he wanted them to slowly start playing up to the highest note that they could possibly play, all at different times, randomly, and that was up to their discretion. But that he wanted them all to end on one note that led into the next part. Now, unfortunately, if you're working with a professional orchestra, they don't want to improvise like that. They want that scored out. So enter George Martin, who has to take John's crazy idea and write it out in music. So George Martin took something that was kind of to that effect, to where each of the different instruments was kind of playing something different, and they were kind of slowly moving up, and then they would eventually end on that big boom up, bump, 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 bump. That's just such an epic moment in the song where you're basically getting what I would like to call organized chaos. Like the orchestra is just playing who knows what. Like George Martin had to score all that, but everybody's just going crazy. And you can even hear like somebody like in the background counting to make sure that everyone's on time. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then like above that you hear like the orchestra just like it almost sounds like a car revving up. But then like they all end on that and then like they had like an alarm clock there, so that just Paul's song is about waking up. So they were like, you know what? And they kept that sound effect, and they put that sound effect in there to kind of get the effect that you just woke up. Okay, I'm going to be the only one who says that I like the Paul part in this song. All right, Jason and Nick both said they didn't like that part. I think it's really interesting, and once again, kind of talking about the duality of Paul and John. We had earlier where Paul says it's getting better all the time, and John says it couldn't get no worse. Like, John's song is all about, oh, isn't the world so terrible? Look at all the terrible things happening in the news. There's violence in movies. The streets need to be paved. And then Paul's just like, oh, I got out of bed. I went to work. Everything is great. And then I got home and smoked some weed, pretty much. And then it's like, I went into a dream. And then you get, which is kind of a musical reprise of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds whenever they go like the And then it goes, like every time somebody talks about drugs, then it switches back. Because then we get like the ba 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 ba, and we're back to John's part. I heard something today, oh boy.
Yeah.
Something, oh boy. And then at the very end, you get that orchestra build up again, but it's even more epic this time, and it goes on a bit longer. And it's just whenever you think it couldn't get more crazy, and you're like, is it going to go to Paul's section again? What's going to happen? It goes, and then it pauses for just a second, and then you get, if the Hard Day's Night was the greatest opening chord to an album, this is the greatest closing chord to an album. You're getting a huge E major chord that was played on. They had a bunch of different people in the studio, and they had to wheel in as many pianos as they could get into the studio, and as many people as they could get. And they all like would line up, and they're like, okay, ready, 1, 2, 3, bah! And they all played the E major chord at the same time in different octaves on all these different pianos. And then they just had them hold it out as long as they could. They would just say, like, let's just hold it as long as we can and see how long we can get it to go. And then George Martin was in the back, and he was pushing the fader gradually up more because the note was ringing out and getting quieter, so he had to push it up to make it last even longer. Apparently, he pushed the fader up so loud that Ringo moved, and his shoe squeaked, and you could hear Ringo's squeaky shoe at the end of the album if you listen very carefully. But I think that's really interesting that the last thing you hear on this album is Ringo's squeaky shoe. Unless you wait a few seconds and you're greeted by a few seconds of gobbledygook at the end that they threw in as a hidden track. There's this dog whistle sound effect, and then the needle will get stuck in a loop, and it will play this infinitely until you pick the needle up, where John just goes, never could see any other way. And he'll just keep saying that until you pick the needle up and put it down, because it's a trick that the needle gets stuck in this last groove on the record, that it won't go out of it.
Okay.
It's really cool.
Isn't it like it's on the UK, but it's on the US version or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Who really liked that they used it for their Who Sell Out album. I'd say that's something, Daniel, you could say the Who stole from the Beatles, was that end group thing. I like the Who that they did it, but to me, I just think the Beatles did a lot better because, well, first, they're the first people to do it, and it's like, come up with your own thing, the Who.
I guess if you're in the U.S., though, then you didn't get to see the Beatles do it, but it was on the U.S. Who album, so.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad in that case because the Beatles were ripped off, and people in the U.S. didn't know that, so.
Yeah.
Plus, I feel like it's more up to interpretation. Like, what is this? It makes people scratch their heads. The Who's one is just like an advertisement for their record label. Track records.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd never heard that part at the end before until when I listened to the full album, and I was like, okay, where's this extra seconds at? I was trying to get to it, and then it like just came out of nowhere, and it was like a jump scare for me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what is this gibberish?
That's
Again, I'm
where streaming
No.
you can't. It's not quite the same experience when you're streaming because it plays that a bunch and then it fades out, which is it's different.
Yeah, it almost sounds like I couldn't tell what he was saying. I thought it was just something about gooses or something. I was like, never cookie is away, goofy ever.
What's funny is people will play into the Paul is dead. You heard about the stupid Paul is dead?
I've heard that.
I might make a video on that.
Actually, I bought the Abbey Road album today on the vinyl, and they poked fun of that on this album where you see Paul McCartney here walking bare feet. People say, "Oh, that." They're poking fun of the fact that Paul is dead because he doesn't have any shoes on.
Jacob, did you read the license plate of that Volkswagen Bug? What does it say?
LMW 28IF.
Yep, Paul would have been 28 if he was still alive. 28IF.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Gotcha.
Anyway, they play into this Paul is dead rumor. That if you play the hidden message backwards, it says, "Will Paul be back as Superman?" And I've heard it. It sounds nothing like that, but it's so ridiculous.
That's like with any song. If they claim if you play a song backwards, there's a hidden message, and it all sounds like gibberish to me. Like supposedly, if you play Another One Bites the Dust backwards, supposedly it says it's fun to smoke marijuana. Well, I saw a video where somebody did that, and all it was. I'm like, that doesn't sound like marijuana. That sounds like it sounds like a screeching geese to me. But anyway, A Day in the Life. I would consider this a musical masterpiece. This song is amazing. I even like the Paul McCartney section. I think I'm with everyone except Nick on that. I love the Paul McCartney section. It's probably the catchiest part on the song. The piano chords are cool. It's the biggest earworm. Woke up to that bed. But I think it works because it works in contrast with John's section. I liked how Scott interpreted the song, and just thinking about it before he even said it, I'm like, I guess John's section is John interpreting the world in a negative lens, and then Paul's just living his life on a day-to-day basis and just making the best of it. I think in that sense, I think the contrast works brilliantly. I do like how both artists sing the song. Musically, the song's great. I love the two orchestra builds, both before the transition from the John to Paul section, but especially the end. The main reason I love this song is the end, where you have that big orchestra build at the end and how chaotic it is. It's pretty much Tomorrow Never Knows, but it makes sense. I historically hated Tomorrow Never Knows, but I love A Day in the Life. And then you get that epic chord at the end, all those pianos, and it's probably the coolest sounding chord I've ever heard in a song ever. And I love how it just goes on. And it holds out for a good amount of time. And it's like, man, what an awesome way to close out this album. Brilliant stuff. All right. Well, we've covered the entirety of Sgt. Pepper's. We don't have any non-album singles to cover this time. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, yeah, they recorded Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields, but they'll actually be on the next album that we'll be reviewing. So we'll save our thoughts on those songs when we review the Magical Mystery Tour album. So for now, what's everybody's top 5?
So my top 5 is going to be, let me pull up the list. Here we go. So my number 5. No, here it is. So my number 5. Number 5 is dang on. It's way too late for me for that. So number 5. Number 5 is sheesh. Number 5 is number 5 is When I'm 64. Number 4 is dang. Number 4 is Getting Better. Number 3, Day in the Life. Number 2, Sergeant Pepper, the title, and number 1 is With a Little Help.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that was so difficult.
It's almost 1 a.m. Don't worry about it. Okay, number 5, Sergeant Pepper's title track. Number 4, oh, blah. See, I'm messing up. Not on purpose. Number 5, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Number 4, With the Love for My Friends. Number 3, Lovely Rita. Number 2, Within You Without You. Number 1, She's Leaving Home.
All right. For me, number 5 is A Little Help from My Friends. Number 4, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Number 3, Getting Better. Number 2, She's Leaving Home. And then number 1, the typical Day in the Life.
I'm going to go with number 5 is When I'm 64. Number 4, I don't know if it's cheating, but I'm going to put Sergeant Pepper in with A Little Help from My Friends because they're kind of one song. Number 3 is She's Leaving Home. Number 2 is Lucy in the Sky. And you know what? I know I said this wasn't going to be my favorite song on this album, but I changed my mind. Number 1 is A Day in the Life.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for me, I'll share some honorable mentions because it's such a good album. Within You Without You, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite are my strong honorable mentions. For me, number 5, When I'm 64. Sorry, Nick. Number 4.
Don't be so hurry. I'm not gonna be like, how dare you, Jacob? We can't be friends anymore.
Number 4, Getting Better. Number 3, do the same thing Scott did and combine Sergeant Pepper and With a Little
Sorry,
Help
not
from My
sorry.
Friends. That's my number 3. Number 2, She's Leaving Home. Number 1, A Day in the Life.
Okay.
I'm happy to see we at least agree on one song with a little for my friends.
Yeah. I feel like out on the 64 one. Me and Nick didn't have that in ours, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are we all going to rate this album?
So, like I said, this album is very precious to me. Why not full to 10?
Okay. Yeah, every time I talk about this album, it feels like the score just keeps getting lower and lower. If we would have did this last week, it would have been an 8. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's now 7.5 out of 10 for me. I think it's a little overrated, in my opinion.
Thought we'd be a little lower.
No, 7.5. I mean, the best songs. My top 5 is really good. Even the title track. I mean, 6 really good songs. So
At least it's not like Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah.
Rip Led Zeppelin 4.
It's still better score than what he gave Beatles for Sale. I think he gave that like a 1, I think.
I gave that a 1 out of 10. So
1 point for every song he likes on that album.
Which is only 8 days a week.
I could have given it half a point, but like 8 days a week is so good, I had to give it a full point just for how good that song is.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm glad I'm going after Nick, so I can't get roasted on my score. But yeah, it's hard. This album, I know people love this album. I understand if you give it 10 out of 10, I'm like, yeah, great. Like, I totally get it. It's a popular album. And I feel so bad when I don't give it a 10 out of 10 because I feel like if I don't, all the other Beatles fans will come after me. And I feel like but if I want to please people, I give it a 10. But if I'm being honest, it's a 9.
Still a good score.
Hey, 9 is still
on that.
I mean, I gave Revolver a 9. So
I would give this an 11 out of 10 if I could, but I can't, so I'm just gonna have to go with 10. Like this is the album that started me off on a musical journey. Like it changed the way that I listen to music. I wouldn't have Bowie back there. I wouldn't have that Abbey Road poster. I'm not going to turn my camera because my room is a little bit of a mess right now. I wouldn't have that whole collection over there. It wasn't for this album, so I don't know if it's just the nostalgia or whatever, but I don't know. I really like this album.
Well, it's a 10 for me as well. I think from what we've covered up to this point, this is my favorite Beatles album. This is easily the most experimental that they did, but yet every single song on this album is excellent. I love the concept. I like the ingenuity of these songs. This is just an absolute masterwork. I can see why this is what Scott claimed to be one of the most important albums in music history. I can definitely see where he's coming from. I did average the score twice with just the four of us since when we've started. The average is a 9, which, considering Nick brought it down to a 7.5, 9 is still really good for the four of us.
Good stuff.
With Ryan, I'm just going to average it to a 9.5.
Yeah.
Since he gave it a 10 as well. All right. Well, thank you all for sticking around and watching our full review of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This is the Beatles at their peak. We're hitting some great stuff. Thank you all that commented on the live chat. If you're watching the replay, share your thoughts in the comments below and join us next time in our Beatles series where we'll be taking a ride on the Magical Mystery Tour.
Roll up, roll up.
We'll see those strawberry fields, and John Lennon turned into a walrus for some reason.
Cuckoo, cuckoo.
Hey, hold up. The walrus was Paul.
Hey, don't spoil that.
Well, John Lennon sang it. I thought he was the walrus.
Apparently you haven't looked through the Glass Onion yet.
I've seen the movie, though, Ryan Johnson.
Different Glass Onion.
Listen to White.
All right. So any final thoughts before we end the stream?
Hey, Nick. When I'm 64, it's a really good song, and it's okay. It's okay to be wrong.
Hey, Ryan. I think For No One is one of the best songs they have, and it's also okay to be wrong sometimes.
She's Leaving Home. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, A Day in the Life.
Yes. I got you on that one, Jason.
We are tired men.
A Day in the Life. I love that song. And When I'm 64. And She's Leaving Home. And Honey Don't.
No, not so much on that one.
That's a song by the
I
Beatles.
do like Honey Don't. Ironically. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have a good night. God bless, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take care.
Good shit.
Honey, don't. More like Ringo don't.